Welcome. We are live from the Legion M Lounge at Sundance 2018. Legion M is the first fan-owned entertainment company, and the lounge this year is sponsored by Cinemark Movie Club and Evolution Fresh. My name is Russ Fisher, and with me is my co-host, film critic and historian Leonard Malton, and we have the director of the documentary HAL, Amy Scott. Please welcome Amy.
Thank you. My pleasure.
And Amy is a director of this particular documentary, but you're a longtime film editor, as was your subject. The film is called HAL, and it's about the late director, editor-turned-director, Hal Ashby. And if the name doesn't ring a bell, if you're not a film buff, you may not know his name, but you certainly know a lot of his movies. The Last Detail, Coming Home, Harold and Maude was one of his first great successes. Being there,
yeah.
One of his, yes, Bound for Glory, so many. And one of my favorites, The Landlord, his first film as a director.
Yeah.
That's a great film that deserves to be better known. So what set you on this journey to explore Hal Ashby's life?
You know, I am a longtime fan of 70s cinema, and I've always loved Hal's films. Part of it had to do with what you just explained. The more I read about, I read Nick Dawson wrote a book about Hal called Being Hal Ashby, Life of a Hollywood Rebel, and it was a phenomenal book, and I sort of meditated on that for a long time. And I think I was in the midst of having my first child, and just had time to really, look at the parallels of Hal's life and my life, and I couldn't believe there wasn't already a Hal Ashby film. There needed to be, and I just saw a great void, and I wanted to know what happened to him after being there. He made all the films that you just listed. Those are phenomenal films, and then I wanted to know what happened to him.
Yeah, because he lived longer. He lived till...
He did live longer. He lived until 1988, I believe. Yes.
So there's a dry spell there.
There was a dry spell, yeah.
Does provoke questions. Yeah.
It does, and the more I unpacked his story and the more people we interviewed in our research, it was a culmination of things. It wasn't just one thing, that sort of led to where'd he go, what happened. It was interesting.
There's a natural impulse, I think, to structuring a film about someone's life, but did you follow that line, or did you find a different narrative line to represent
in
him?
terms of just did I follow it chronologically through his life?
Yeah.
We sort of, I think we did do that for the most part. What I really wanted to do was show how much he was actually in his movies. He did throw himself in shots sometimes. He would be in the background. Not literally, but sort of the story, the protagonist that we were following mirrored things that he did in his life. So I did try to find that. So there's sort of a parallel narrative of these male protagonists, Bud Cort, Warren Beatty, all Jack Nicholson. Chauncey Gardner, they were all sort of lost and looking for things and doing similar things that Hal was doing in his personal life. So I tried to interweave that. So it was chronological to some extent, but we did bounce back and forth.
So you found kind of a through line.
I found a through line, yes.
Interesting.
Yes.
And so I think to a wide audience, Hal Ashby might not be as known as he should be, which, hopefully your film will change that a little bit. But I would assume that as you go out to people in Hollywood, if you call people and say like, hey, do you have anything to say about Hal Ashby? People are like, oh my God, yeah, let's do this. Was that the experience that you had?
That was 1,000% the experience, with the exception of a handful that we just weren't able to get to. It was really easy, like ridiculously easy, to the point where I'm probably very spoiled for the next film I do. I don't think I can just call up Jane Fonda.
I'm going to ask you to name drop some of the people who appear in your film.
The first interview I did was Jane Fonda. This is my this is my directorial debut, so it was totally terrifying to be like, okay, it's Jane, and she was amazing. And then John
I'm
Voight.
sure, not to put too fine a point on it, but I'm sure she was pleased to have a woman making this film.
She was pleased, and Coming Home is very much Jane's film, Jane's story. What she did to get that film made was incredible. So she was wonderful. Gosh, now I'm blanking. There, like you said, there was all the people that did work with Hal: Jeff Bridges, Beau Bridges, Lee Grant, Cat Stevens. Louis Gossett Jr. He was wonderful, and then there was the contemporary directors, because I really wanted to connect with a younger audience, and I thought, okay, I see his influence in all of these films now, these sort of character-driven, interpersonal narratives, and so I wanted to talk to those guys and have them kind of lay it on us too, and of course they were like, yes, what do you want to know, you know. Like,
So who'd you land?
Alexander Payne, David O. Russell, Judd Apatow, Adam McKay, Allison Anders, Lisa Cholodenko. There's, I think might be it. Yeah, we had some phenomenal people.
What did Allison Anders have to say?
Well, she covered Bound for Glory initially, so I kind of wanted to assign them all like their own case study.
Okay.
And Allison Anders, I mean, she's just,
She's incredible.
you know, she
Amazing career for her.
Yeah, the whole arc of her career really sort of, I felt like she would understand the aesthetic of Bound for Glory, these like sweeping landscapes of, you know, the plain states, and so she really got into, she got really into comparing what was happening in the story of Bound for Glory, like the socialist angle and what it was representative of America at the time. So we're also trying to mirror what HAL was mirroring in society in his films. I wanted to show that that's completely what's happening right now. He made these really prescient films.
Yeah.
So Allison brought that out, yeah, in spades.
Wow.
Yeah.
Almost every smart young filmmaker I meet or interview or read an interview with uses films of the 70s, American films of the 70s, as their touchstone. It's rare that I find otherwise. It was a great moment in cinema, really. Great flowering of talent. And he was right at the head of the pack with all those other guys.
He was. No, I mean, you would know. It's there. You know, the way that films sort of, the way that studios operated. There was that sweet spot in the 70s
Yeah,
where you could
yeah.
do. I mean, Altman, Cassavetes. Like, there's just so many, just really creative people that had the latitude to do what they wanted to
Yeah.
do and make those films. And then that didn't last. You know.
No, it
then we
didn't.
went through a dry spell
Yeah.
in terms of that. But now it's back again. I think it's
Well,
great,
yes.
you know.
Well, look where we are.
Right.
We're here at the Sundance Film Festival,
Clearly.
which is on the cutting edge
Clearly.
of what's happening cinematically right now, and which is very much reflective of what's happening socially at the same moment. Which, I mean, just the fact that you're here, and again, I'm not trying to lay this on with a trowel, but we have today, in the course of our interviews today, we've talked to more women behind the camera and in front of the camera than we would have, say, 5 years ago. That's a healthy progression. We hope it continues. I think it will.
I think it will.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm curious, like you say, you know, the times where things that Hal was depicting in his films are newly relevant again. I think of a film like Shampoo, which seems like, especially as we come towards like the anniversary of, you know, the anniversary of kind of 1969. We're coming up on 40 years of that, and things that Hal Ashby was referencing in Shampoo are very critical to what was going on then. Did you learn anything, or did anything come out in that film or any other that seemed like really particularly relevant now?
Well, in each of his films, I wanted to. I mean, like Shampoo, definitely, and that was shot under. David O. Russell talks a lot about that, about how if you look at it, there's Nixon. The Nixon election is happening, and it's in every scene just about. But it's like, you know, Ashby, like cool in the background, like it's not in your face, but you're always kind of contemplating it, and it's like the narcissism of the people, which is, to me, I read that as like all of us on our phones and just not catching what's going on the top level big picture.
Yeah.
But the same could be said for The Landlord. I mean, he's tackling gentrification and race relations like in 1970. Like
Yeah.
it was great, you know. And now
Yeah.
being there, I think being there is exactly what's happening right now. So.
Yeah. No, they are a remarkable. Well, it's a remarkable body of work. But individually as well as collectively, there's so much to explore there, and I'm sure. I mean, one of the great things now is access to these films. I mean, it'd be lovely to see them all on a theater screen, but if you really want to see Bound for Glory and you haven't, you can. And if you haven't seen The Landlord, you should, and you can, and so it goes. our time is running out, but we want to congratulate you on the film and
Thank
wish you great
you.
success.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming
Thanks for joining us.
My
Amy
pleasure.
Scott.
Amy Scott.